Greetings and welcome to this course on water and physiology. I'm Joel Jacobson, and in this lesson on substance and its dehydrating effect, we'll examine the whole aspect of how different substances itself, when we consume them, they're actually impinging some kind of effect on the body that requires water. And because a lot of us are not consuming foods that are fully hydrated through nature, just like a cucumber, but we consume stuff like breads, those processed foods appear to lack that hydration that allows substance to be metabolized properly in the body. Metabolized in the sense where it's able to be digested properly and shipped across the body and assimilated. So, to begin with, substance itself is everywhere, and water can be even considered a substance. But because biology itself uses this water as a spatial dimension, as a medium within it, it can do anything and everything. It itself is able to ennoble substances through processes and create molecules that are of very much of a biological significance. And so we are dealing here with substances that are not just minerals, but also the macromolecules. When we discussed early on in this course about the process of catabolism and anabolism, where water is supposed to be, or is used at least, in the process of breaking apart storage units and releasing single units out of proteins, like releasing the amino acids or the fatty acids from the triglycerides, or the sugars like glucose from its long chain starch. So the body itself requires water in order to pretty much make those macromolecules available. In that sense, that when we consume food, and we consume food of any variety, even hydrated food will require water in order to ship it around, in order to digest it, break it apart, to catabolize it, or another word for it would be hydrolyze. And so hydrolysis itself is the process of adding water between these two molecules and separating them. And so we're losing water through the process of breaking apart and making these units more available. In that sense, when we're consuming something like bread, where it itself was used water in the process of baking it, we had to mix water with the flour to hydrate the flour. Essentially, the flour itself is full of gluten. And gluten itself is very controversial. A lot of people are talking about how gluten is very bad for us, and they're not really giving you a reason to really consider why is it. So gluten itself, I've written an article about it called "Is Gluten-Free a Hoax?" and it was an investigation of mine into this whole aspect when I was reading about water and physiology and coming across all this information about our physiology and how water itself is very much necessary. Because when we're dehydrated, our body is having a hard time digesting because that water has to be allocated to prioritized organs around the body. So when we're consuming gluten, gluten itself is a storage unit within seeds. So the seed, when it starts germinating, if you place it in the ground or in some soil and you start watering it for a while, what the seed's going to do is it's going to start waking up and tapping into storage units in order to build up machineries and structures and essentially send that root down into the earth and send that shoot upwards into the sky and towards the sun. So through that process of germination, the seed itself is tapping into storage units within its kernel, within its seed. And one of them is going to be gluten. Now, gluten itself is specifically for wheat. There's a family called prolamins, which is going to be this family of storage units which are found across all grains. So barley will have a specific storage unit, not named gluten, but named something else. Just like also spelt, rice, and so on and so forth, like rye as well. So all these different grains are using storage units because they are seeds and they need those storage units. Gluten itself is that storage unit that is a protein that's folded up very tightly because this is a seed. It's going to be folded so tightly that when the seed starts germinating, it's going to require a lot of water in order to keep on hydrolyzing, keep on catabolizing that protein, that gluten, and continuously tap into that storage unit, into that energy unit, for not only energy but also building blocks for the plant, for the stem, for the root, everything that the seed needs. So the process of breaking apart that gluten within the seed requires water. Same thing within our body. When we're consuming gluten, we're going to have to invest. Our body is going to have to invest that water. It's going to allocate water from different parts of the body in order to properly hydrate and do that catabolism, okay, hydrolyze that gluten, that protein. Basically, when we put gluten into our body, our food is going to start, that gluten is going to start absorbing that liquids, and then if it's not sufficient, the body is going to have to compensate and go in order to properly digest this gluten. Why? Because the body has to digest this. It has to process this food. Once you put food into your mouth, the body is going to spend energy into digesting it. So it's going to eventually come to the small intestines, and there again it's going to be catabolizing it further, and it being not just protein but also a lot of sugar. It itself is going to be a dosage of sugar in your blood. There's a lot of factors that come when it comes to gluten or comes to bread itself, when you're eating processed foods like this, that they require a lot of water to process in the body, and essentially also water to eliminate them. Because if you keep on eating dry foods and you never supplement yourself on water adequately, you're going to end up having some form of constipation, some form of backup in your stool, and that leads to further complications. So there is a difference between hydrated food in nature and substance that is manipulated by man in order to make what's called food for us, but essentially it's going to require water. And if we're not properly hydrating ourselves before a meal or after a meal or throughout our day in any kind of sense, we're ending up with some kind of progressive dehydration. Our drought management system is going to turn on, and it's going to eventually prioritize organs. You're going to have that pain that's going to signal to you that there's a certain threshold that's been crossed. So pay attention to what your body is telling you, and keep in mind that this type of food, okay, gluten and nature, okay, these are two different foods. One can cause you some progressive dehydration. Another one will pretty much alleviate it. It's going to be much more hydrating than this. This is going to require less water to assimilate than this. This is going to require a lot of water to assimilate. Not only assimilate, but also excrete from the body. Well, that is all I wanted to talk about. Pretty much the whole idea of, well, substance and its dehydrating effect. Just keep in mind that we're dealing here with food that has been processed, and any types of processed food is going to impinge its influence and demand on our water-based physiology. Thank you for listening. You have a lovely day wherever you are, and blessings.